My friend Deanna Spiro and her husband Bob invited me to an online seminar on financial planning. They started off by sharing they had gone bankrupt together in 2017. It was a strain on their marriage and very anxiety producing. It's what they had to share. They broke their experience apart and offered it to us. They were too broke to get a divorce or separation. We have the separation of church and state in this country, but Deanna and her husband didn't have that option. We assume the separation of church and state is for the protection of the church and not the state. But the state needs to be protected from being spiritualized so it can get stuff done. And the church needs to be protected from the hypocrisy of being literal. That's why we're polarized. We hear the spiritual as a bunch of policy issues, and then we argue about it instead of doing anything about it instead. Welcome. Welcome to Coffee Hour. I'm Stanley Smith. At Coffee Hour, we talk about everything and nothing. Recently, we talked about running errands, having a purpose and a plan, and how your heart can't be in the right place if your head is in the wrong place, and that it wouldn't be worth doing if it wasn't a little difficult. The readings at Washington National Cathedral were from Genesis. We wrestle with God, even though it's an unfair matchup. In Romans, there's a separation of church and state for the protection of the state. And the gospel reading was from Matthew. If you can't stand the waves, then get out of the boat. The sermon at Washington National Cathedral is by Dana Costello. Dana preached about how we can always see the stories in the Bible in a new and different way. We can see compassion for others or make it about ourselves. Dana said she was embarrassed on her summer vacation this year in Colorado when she didn't stop to help a couple with a flat tire at the gas station she pulled into. She offered a prayer instead of offering any tangible help. Theology can be clever and self-serving, or it can get something done. Dana said true power is not self-serving or about control. It's about helping others. When we fail to do so, it usually has more to do about the underlying insecurity that we don't have any power or control. People who lash out usually do so out of their own insecurity. Thankfully, God intervenes. People are rescued, saved, and healed. Otherwise, gas stations with people with flat tires would be epidemic. Hospital waiting rooms would be always overflowing, and there would be a national shortage of cemetery plots. Even the worldwide pandemic of COVID-19 abated, mostly without human intervention. We can make our lack of compassion a pity pat party for ourselves, or we can move the narrative along, see the story in a different way, see the scripture in a new way, a way that serves God and not ourselves. The sermon at St. James Cathedral here in Chicago was by Stephen Balke. Stephen said, we want to move along and leave the history of the Old Testament behind us and focus on the words of Jesus instead. The Old Testament and the New Testament are always dealing through the narrative of human history because there's no separation of God's history and ours. He made us a great nation. We see it from our perspective. We wrestle with God, but a more correct translation is God is wrestling with us. Similar to the history of Israel itself, sometimes the oppressed become the oppressors, and the powerless become the abusers. It's a troubling phenomenon. We're always trying to get out from underneath it, but in the process, someone always seems to get trampled. Halfway through Stephen's sermon, I started thinking about the old classic film, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? We think we know who the villain is, but often we get it wrong. God probably is wrestling with us on that account. It takes someone to get in the boat and cross over to us, bringing us peace and healing Wherever there is pain and suffering, we are not alone. Christ is already there. My friend Maureen has a sick jade plant. She sent me a picture of it. It's sick and dying. She brought it to the Rush Hour concert this week at Holy Name Cathedral, and we planted it on the premises so it could have a good end of life experience. Um, it wasn't going to get any better in the environment it was living in. We can all look around at our environment. Are we planted in healthy soil? Do we have room to breathe? And what about the people around us? The new book, The Serviceberry Tree, tells us trees communicate with each other. When they are doing well, they all rejoice and share that experience. And when one is suffering, they all know it. We can wallow in our own pity pat party, or rejoice in the best times of our lives. There's always some good in the bad, and sometimes some bad in even the good. We can sense it or literalize it or make it a government policy issue. Man doesn't live by policy alone, but by every other person we encounter each day. If you would like to join us at coffee hour, I will include my email in the description of this video. Be happy to send you an invitation. And I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.